Hi everyone, welcome to Lab 4. This is where we are going to query data directly in our object store. So if you remember in Lab 3, we went to the object store and we uploaded some files, which we created this bucket called ADWC Lab. We uploaded some files and then we took in Lab 3 the customer data here and we loaded that into our Autonomous Data Warehouse cloud environment. In this example, we're actually going to query this file directly. So we're not going to take the data and load it, we're actually going to query it in place on the object store. So how do we do that? Okay, I'm going to assume possibly that you've jumped to this stage. So remember in the first lab where we set up our Autonomous Data Warehouse cloud instance, we created a couple of new connections using our two resource groups, or using two of the three resource groups that we have. So we used our low and high resource groups. For this example, I'm just going to quickly connect to our low resource group and we're going to paste in some code. All of the code's provided for you. And what I'm going to do is, let's just quickly bring all this up. So you're going to get a lot more code than this. We're going to load up some additional data. But remember the object store that we used, the link that we used in Lab 3. We're going to reuse that. So you can see, just quickly refresh your memory. ADWC is my tenant. This is my bucket inside the object store. And we point to that up here. So you'll have to amend your code. Okay, so you'll need to put your own tenant name in here and the bucket. Here's the file. Okay, so that is going to point to, let me get back over to here, to this file here. Okay, all good. So how do we do this? What we're going to do, we're going to use the DBMS cloud package that we used in the earlier lab, in Lab 3. And specifically, we're going to call this part of it to create an external table. The table is going to be called this. We're going to use the credential object that we created in Lab 3. So we're going to reuse that. We're going to pass in the product URL, which is going to point me to that file. Okay. Then we've got some processing details, how we want the data to be managed. And in this case, what we're actually going to load is some JSON data. Okay. Execute. Completed successfully. Right. So let's have a quick look at this. Oh, here we go. So let's move this up a bit so you can see it. So this is not possibly what you're expecting to see. So this is what's called JSON format. If you're not familiar with that, we get an ID, a key, and we get a value. So in this case, prod ID is my key, and 13 is the value. Key, prod name, and then a description. But you'll notice it's all in one column. This is a fairly typical way that you're going to consume files that have been derived from internet-based applications. JSON format key value pairs. Now within Oracle, we can actually transform that format there into the format that you're more familiar with by creating a table. So I can actually just query that, and now we transform that data set into a table of rows and columns. That's the code-based way of doing it. So if you're a DBA, that's probably, you're going to set up your scripts and it's going to look pretty similar to this. SQL Developer comes with a table loading wizard. So what we can do here is if we go up to our tables node and we can click import data, and this is going to be fairly similar to the steps that we went through yesterday. So I'm going to do a cloud storage I'm going to point to a file. Let's get this set up correctly. I think it's called channels error CSV. Let's quickly go over to our object store. That's the file I want. Let's just make sure that's set up correctly. Okay, I need to use my object store. So we're following basically the same approach as we did last time. You can see here we've got a similar problem to the one that we had before in Lab 3, where the defaults that we provide may or may not match your exact file. So in this case, it doesn't. My delimiter between values is actually a semicolon. So I switch that to a semicolon, and now my data set appears. Fantastic. Okay, so now we can move to the next one. Okay, what shall I call this? I'll call this channels external, and I'm going to create it as an external table. Okay, so we've gone from cloud load, flipped over to external table. So if I now do next, it's going to give me the standard SQL Developer data loading wizard. See, those are all okay. Let's take 10 rows. It's telling me it's not currently tested, so let's try that. Let's test it. It tells me it's successful. That's great. Let's do next. We get the normal summary. Finish. It's going off. It's creating all the necessary setup work. That's all done. So what we now need to do is, let's come back over here and let's do select star from channels ext, which was the table that we set up. And there's our data set. So that is pointing to this file and querying it directly and bringing the results back. That's it. That's the two ways that you can set this up. So the wizard just takes you through in a very simple way, step by step, defining all these pieces of information. What the URL is, what the object name is that you're going to create. We created channels ext, my credential, the various parameters that are needed. So in our case, we switched it to a semicolon from the default comma, and we set up a column list, and the wizard will guide you through that whole process. Or like a DBA, you can just script it all as you've already seen from downloading that code snippet. So there we go, querying data directly on the object store without having to load it into your data warehouse. In effect, creating you a very powerful, very fast, flexible data lake.